It was supposed to be a simple birthday celebration. Nothing too crazy, just a night out with my girlfriends. A few drinks, some dancing, and maybe a little fun to take my mind off the usual grind of life. I had told my husband, Tom, that I'd be home late, but nothing to worry about. I promised him there wouldn't be any surprises, that I just needed a break. A little time for myself, you know. I hadn't had one of those in ages. Honestly, I didn't even think it was a big deal. Tom and we'd been married for a while now, about 5 years. And, like a lot of couples, the spark had faded a little. It wasn't like we didn't love each other. We did. But we'd gotten comfortable. Too comfortable. The emotional connection wasn't what it used to be, and the physical part of our relationship. Yeah, that was barely there. He was always busy with work, and I was just trying to keep it all together, you know? So when I told him I was going out, I guess I was really just looking for a little excitement. I wanted to feel like me again. I didn't want to think about responsibility or bills or the laundry pile that never seemed to shrink. I wanted to feel something again. I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. Was I wrong? Have fun, babe, Tom had said, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek before I left. His eyes didn't really have that spark anymore, but I guess I didn't notice it until later. Maybe I should have. Maybe that was a sign that something wasn't right between us, but I brushed it off. The club was buzzing with energy when I walked in. The music, the lights, the people. It felt like the whole world was alive. I hadn't felt that way in a long time. My girlfriends and I were having a blast, just chatting, laughing, and catching up. And then they went off to the bar to grab another round of drinks. That's when I noticed them. 2 guys standing by the dance floor, looking like they'd just stepped out of some magazine cover. One of them, Jake, was tall, dark-haired, and had this easy smile that made you want to smile right back. The other, Ethan, was a bit shorter but had this rugged, mysterious vibe to him. They were both, I don't know, charming. Not the kind of guys I'd usually notice, but tonight, I was open to anything. They started talking to me almost immediately, and I could tell they were interested. Not in the usual, just being nice way. No, this was different. They were into me. At first, I didn't think much of it. It felt good though, being seen like that. It had been so long since someone had given me that kind of attention. I didn't even realize how much I missed it until they both kept smiling at me, laughing at my jokes, leaning in just a little too close. The alcohol didn't help, of course. It made everything feel lighter, more carefree. I was laughing harder than I had in ages. One of them, Jake, I think, asked me if I wanted to dance. I had almost forgotten how good it felt to move to the beat of the music, to feel free. The dance floor wasn't crowded at all, and it felt like we were the only ones there. Every step, every sway, it was like I was shedding layers of stress, of responsibility, of the routine that had begun to suffocate me. At some point, Ethan whispered something in my ear. His breath was warm against my skin. "You're a great dancer," he said, his voice low and smooth, sending a shiver down my spine. It was so simple, but it made me feel alive again. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed feeling desired. We kept dancing, talking, joking around. It wasn't anything too deep, nothing to make me think twice. I wasn't planning anything, I wasn't looking for trouble, but everything felt so easy, so effortless. Like there was no reason not to just go with it. The fun, the thrill, it was almost intoxicating. After a while, we stepped off the dance floor to grab more drinks. Jake kept teasing me, and Ethan kept making me laugh. It felt good to be seen, really seen. Not as someone's wife, not as the person responsible for everything at home, but as a woman. A woman who was desirable, who was interesting, who could still make someone else want her. At one point, I caught myself thinking, this is harmless, right? I'm just having fun. But there was a tiny voice in my head that whispered, is it? But I ignored it. Maybe I was tired of being careful. Tired of being the good wife, the one who always did what was expected. Maybe I was just tired of being responsible. Jake and Ethan seemed like good guys. Nothing about them screamed, bad decision. We were just 3 people enjoying a night out. But the longer I stayed, the more I started to feel wanted. I'd forgotten what that was like. When the night stretched on, I didn't pay attention to the time. I was having too much fun. The laughter, the flirtation, the easy banter. It felt like everything had been leading to this moment. And I wasn't sure what would happen next. But, at that moment, I didn't care. Everything felt dangerous, but also thrilling. Would I regret this? Maybe. But right then, I wasn't thinking about tomorrow. I was just thinking about now. As the night went on, the atmosphere in the club began to shift. The energy felt thicker now, more charged. The music seemed louder, the lights flashing more intensely, and the air between me and these two men was crackling with something different. There was a kind of unspoken tension in the way they looked at me, in the way they leaned closer each time they spoke. It wasn't just friendly banter anymore. It was more loaded. Their glances lingered, their touches were more intentional, more suggestive. At first, it was innocent. Just a hand brushing my arm, their fingers lightly grazing my back as we laughed about something. But, as the night progressed, it became clear that these touches weren't just accidental. At some point, Jakey, he was the one who kept making me laugh the most, shifted in closer and let his fingers trail down my side. His hand lingered there for a second longer than what would have been considered casual. And when I didn't pull away, it was as if he took that as a silent invitation. Ethan, too, wasn't far behind, his touch soft but deliberate, his eyes never leaving mine. They both seemed to know exactly what they were doing, and honestly, I couldn't deny that I was enjoying it. In some corner of my mind, I knew I should probably step back, that I was dancing dangerously close to something I might regret. But I couldn't stop myself. It had been so long since I'd felt this way, since I'd felt desired in such an intense, immediate way. Everything else, my marriage, my obligations, even my own sense of control, started to fade into the background. All I could focus on was the moment, the heat between us, the way their attention made me feel like I was the only woman in the room. I laughed, trying to keep the situation light. "This is crazy, you guys?" I said, half smiling, trying to downplay the fact that I was getting pulled into something deeper. But my voice betrayed me. There was a tremor in it that I couldn't quite hide. I was enjoying the attention more than I should have. Jake smiled, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "You're incredible, Lily. Why do you hide all this? You should just let go." His hand brushed my waist, and this time, he didn't pull it away. He kept it there, his fingers tracing the curve of my hip. I felt a pulse of heat spread through my body. "Yeah," Ethan chimed in, his voice low and almost a little teasing. "You look like you could use a little more excitement. Why not come with us? It's just a short ride, and I promise, we'll have a lot more fun." There it was, the offer. I felt a flutter in my chest, a strange mix of fear and excitement. Inside, a part of me wanted to say no. It wasn't me, right? I was a married woman. I had commitments, boundaries. But another part of me was already imagining what that might be like, that moment of freedom. I didn't want to admit it to myself, but I could feel it stirring, the desire to break free, to feel alive again, even if just for one night. I hesitated. For a second, it felt like the whole world slowed down. My mind raced. This wasn't what I had planned. This wasn't supposed to be the night I'd end up here, with two strangers, at the edge of something I couldn't predict. But my heart was pounding, and all I could hear was their voices, urging me on. I looked at them both, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was trapped by expectations or roles. I felt wanted. "Come on, Lily," Jake said, his hand sliding lower, his thumb brushing the waistband of my skirt. "We know what you really want. Don't you deserve to feel good again?" Ethan's voice was softer, coaxing. "Yeah, it'll be fun. We won't pressure you. You can leave whenever you want. But I can tell you're ready for something more. And we'll give it to you." I could feel my pulse quicken as I processed their words. The part of me that still had some control was screaming in my head, but it was being drowned out by everything else. The warmth, the electricity in the air, the hunger I could feel creeping up inside me. And before I knew it, I was nodding almost without thinking. "Okay," I whispered. "Let's go." The next few moments were a blur, a series of hurried decisions and hurried movements. We left the club and slipped into one of their cars. Ethan was driving, while Jake sat next to me. The ride was quiet, except for the occasional exchange between them, teasing and playful, but I barely registered it. My thoughts were too scattered. The closer we got to wherever we were going, the harder it was to stop. I knew I should have been questioning things, but I wasn't. Instead, I just felt a sense of reckless abandon. When we finally reached their apartment, Jake's, I think, I stepped out of the car and into the night, my legs shaky but my heart racing. The city was quiet now, and the apartment was dimly lit, modern and clean. They led me inside, and I barely remembered how we got to the living room, how we started talking again, how we were standing so close, with Jake's hand running up my back, and Ethan's fingers brushing my wrist. Everything started to blur. I could feel the pull, the desire I hadn't let myself feel in so long. They were both there, their eyes full of heat, and I could feel myself responding in ways I didn't know I could anymore. I wasn't thinking about Tom. I wasn't thinking about anything but the desire to feel again, to escape, to let go. Before I could think twice, the rest of my clothes were off, and I was kissing Jake, then Ethan. The air was thick, every touch, every whisper, driving me deeper into a place I wasn't sure I could come back from. I was lost in the moment, in the heat, in the excitement, and I couldn't stop. It all happened so fast. And by the time the morning light crept in, I woke up to a quiet, still apartment, my mind a storm of confusion. I couldn't remember all the details, but I knew it was already too late. I had crossed a line I didn't know I was willing to cross. And there was no turning back now. The morning light crept in through the blinds, casting an almost eerie calm over the apartment. The silence was deafening. I lay there for a long time, staring up at the ceiling, my body aching from the night before, but not just physically. My mind was in turmoil. It was as if the world was spinning too fast and I was struggling to catch up. What had happened? What did I just do? Was I the person I thought I was? Was I someone else now? The events of the night flooded back in bits and pieces. The touch, the words, the way I had let myself be swept away, Thar. It all felt like a blur, but then there were moments that stood out in stark clarity. Jake's hand on my back, Ethan's lips on my neck, the way I didn't push them away. How could I have done this? I wasn't that person. I wasn't someone who cheated. But here I was, in a stranger's bed, feeling a knot of guilt twisting in my stomach. I had told myself it was just a mistake, just a one-time thing, a slip-up, nothing more. But deep down, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I had crossed a line I could never uncross. What did it mean? Was I that unhappy in my marriage? Or was it something else entirely? Was it simply the need for attention, for someone to notice me, to make me feel desired again? God, I hadn't felt like that in so long. I had been craving attention, craving validation, and I convinced myself that this was my way of finding it. But what about Tom? What about everything we had built together? The guilt was suffocating. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror without feeling a wave of shame wash over me. How had I let myself get here? I had betrayed him. But was it really a betrayal, or just a consequence of years of neglect? He hadn't paid attention to me the way he used to. He hadn't made me feel special in months. Was that an excuse? No, it wasn't. But it was a reason, and I couldn't deny that. As I lay there, I knew I had to face the consequences of my actions. I had to go home. I had to face Tom. But how? What would I say? What could I possibly say to explain this? How could I tell him I had cheated on him, even if I wasn't sure I wanted to call it that? I took a deep breath and stood up, my legs still unsteady. The apartment felt cold. I quickly gathered my things and made my way out the door, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. But there was no clearing my mind. Every thought felt like a weight pressing down on me. I was trapped. When I got home, I didn't want to face Tom. I didn't want to see his face, to know he was going to ask me about my night, but I knew he would, and I knew I couldn't lie to him forever. As I walked through the door, I was greeted by the usual calm of our home. Too calm. Tom was in the kitchen, making coffee, like he always did on a Sunday morning. He smiled when he saw me, but there was something in his eyes. A quiet curiosity, maybe even concern. "Hey, babe. How was the night? You have fun?" he asked. Looking over at me, I froze. The words hung in the air. What do I say? Do I tell him the truth? Do I tell him about the two men? About how I let them touch me, kiss me, take me in a way he hadn't in years? Or do I lie? Do I say everything was fine, that I had a great time, that nothing happened? What would he believe? I opened my mouth, but the words didn't come out right away. It felt like there was a weight in my chest, and no matter how much I tried to push it down, it wouldn't go away. "Yeah, it was fine," I said, my voice a little too high-pitched. "Just hung out with the girls, had a few drinks, laughed. You know, the usual?" Tom didn't look convinced, but he nodded, giving me a small smile. "I'm glad you had fun," he said, turning back to the coffee machine. "You deserve a good time." I felt the guilt twist again. Here he was, being so kind and normal, and I had just shattered everything. I should have told him. I should have come clean. But I couldn't. The shame, the fear of what would happen next, held me back. I couldn't bear the thought of seeing the hurt in his eyes. And deep down, I didn't know if I could live with the guilt that would come with admitting what I had done. Instead, I kept quiet. I stood there, watching him go about his routine, while my insides churned. I tried to act like everything was fine, but it wasn't. It would never be fine again. I had let something happen that couldn't be undone, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely alone. Later, after the silence had stretched between us for too long, I retreated to the bedroom. I closed the door behind me and sat on the edge of the bed. My hands trembled as I ran them through my hair, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Was it a mistake? I wanted to believe it was. I wanted to believe that I had just been caught up in the moment, that I had somehow fallen victim to my own insecurities and desires. But as much as I tried to convince myself of that, the truth lingered in my mind. I had chosen this. No one made me do it. I could have walked away at any time, but I didn't. I had made that decision, and now I had to live with the consequences. I told myself it didn't have to ruin my life. That this one mistake shouldn't define me, or our relationship. But deep down, I knew it had changed something. Something I couldn't undo. And as I sat there in the silence, the weight of what I had done pressed down harder than ever. As the days passed, the weight of what I had done only grew heavier. I thought maybe, just maybe, it would fade with time, that I'd forget about it, push it to the back of my mind where it couldn't hurt anymore. But the truth was, it wasn't something I could just erase. No matter how hard I tried to ignore it, the reality of what had happened kept creeping up on me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The touch, the words, the way I had let myself slip into a moment that wasn't supposed to be mine. I kept replaying the night in my head, over and over. Like a loop I couldn't stop. I thought of Tom, of the life we had built, and the promise we had made to each other when we got married. And then I thought about how I had broken that promise. I didn't know if I could ever look at him the same way again without feeling that sting of guilt. I found myself asking, what did this mean for us? Could we even go back to how things were? Or was that an impossible dream? How would I ever face him if the truth came out? The guilt tore at me, but it was tangled with something else, something more complicated. There was a part of me that was relieved. Relieved that for once, I had felt seen. For once, I wasn't invisible. There was this strange mix of shame and satisfaction that I couldn't fully explain. But as much as I wanted to hold on to that feeling, I knew it wasn't healthy. It wasn't right, and I hated myself for even letting myself feel that way. But at the same time, I couldn't help but feel like it was Tom's fault. I tried not to think that way, but the thoughts kept surfacing. He had been distant for so long. The nights spent on his laptop, the days he was always too tired. For us. The silence between us, the lack of connection, the way our intimacy had just disappeared. Wasn't it only natural to seek attention elsewhere? Wasn't it his lack of care, his indifference, that had left me feeling so empty and forgotten? I didn't want to blame him entirely, but it was hard not to. It felt like I had been waiting for something, some sign from him to make me feel like I mattered. But all I got was more distance, more silence. And somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that I deserved something more, something better. I called Emma, one of my close friends, because I needed to talk. I didn't know who else to turn to. Tom was still in the dark, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living a lie, hiding this from him. Emma had always been someone I could confide in. Even if I didn't want to hear the truth, she'd tell me. I can't believe this happened, I said, my voice shaky. I feel like a different person. I don't even know who I am anymore. She paused before responding. Are you sure you're doing the right thing, Lily? What if Tom finds out? What if you lose everything? I don't know. I whispered, my voice thick with tears. Maybe it was just a stupid mistake, but sometimes you just feel like you're losing yourself. And then, just for a moment, you do something crazy, something reckless, and it feels like you're alive again. Maybe that's all it was. Maybe it doesn't mean anything. I get it. I do. Emma said gently, her voice soft. But do you really think you can just move on from this? Will he be able to forgive you if he finds out? And what about you, Lily? Will you ever forgive yourself? Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't really thought about the long-term consequences. I had been so consumed by the feeling of freedom, the need to be seen, that I hadn't considered what would come next. What would happen to me if I couldn't forgive myself? And what would happen to Tom and me if the truth came out? I don't know. I said quietly, swallowing back the lump in my throat. Maybe it'll just go away. Maybe it was just one night, and I'll forget about it. Maybe I'll just never tell him. But what if it eats at you? Emma asked softly. What if the guilt is too much? It sounds like you already feel that way. I didn't answer right away. The truth was, I did feel guilty. I felt it in the pit of my stomach, gnawing at me. But at the same time, I didn't know if I was ready to let go of that feeling of being seen again. That feeling of excitement and desire I hadn't felt in so long. I just want to forget Em. I just want to go back to the way things were before all this. I want to believe it was just a mistake. She was quiet for a moment before replying. You have to decide, Lily. What kind of person do you want to be? Because it's not just about Tom. It's about you too. It's about whether or not you can live with what you've done. Her words lingered with me long after we hung up. It was like a weight had been placed on my chest. I hadn't fully considered the consequences of my actions, of what they meant for me as a person. It wasn't just about Tom. It was about who I was now, and what I wanted to become. The truth hit me hard. I couldn't erase what had happened. I couldn't forget it. It was a part of me now, a dark chapter in a story I had once believed would be free of such mistakes. But maybe, just maybe, this was the wake-up call I needed. This was my chance to stop pretending, to stop hiding from what I truly wanted, to face the parts of myself that I had been running from for so long. And as I sat there in silence, I realized something else, that whatever happened, whatever came next, this night would forever change the way I saw myself. Maybe it would destroy my marriage. Maybe it would destroy me. But perhaps it was also the first step in rebuilding something, in figuring out who I truly was and what I truly needed. But for now, I had no answers, only questions. It's strange how life can change in the blink of an eye, how one moment can tear everything apart. For months after that night, I tried to go on, as if nothing had happened. I convinced myself that I could forget, that I could hide the truth deep enough that no one would ever know. But the guilt never went away. It was always there, lurking beneath the surface, reminding me of the mess I'd made. Tom wasn't stupid. I could see the change in him long before he confronted me. He had noticed the way I looked at him sometimes. Like I was trying to remember who he was, like I had forgotten the man I married. He noticed how I would retreat into myself, how the small things, the things that used to matter, no longer felt important to me. The laughter, the connection, the intimacy, it was all gone. And I couldn't even pretend it was still there. I thought maybe if I just kept quiet, kept going through the motions, he wouldn't ask the questions I didn't want to answer. But one night, about 2 months after my mistake, Tom came to me. It wasn't anger in his eyes. It was sadness. He knew, he had always known, in some way. Who is he? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. I froze. I hadn't prepared myself for this moment. In my mind, I thought I had done everything right by pretending it never happened. But there was no hiding the truth anymore. I couldn't lie to him. At least, not to his face. I felt the tears well up as I looked at him, the man I had promised to love, the man I had betrayed. I'm sorry, I said, my voice breaking. I don't even know how to explain it. It wasn't supposed to happen. It was a mistake. A stupid mistake. He just stared at me, his expression hardening with each word. He didn't speak for a long time, just stood there, looking at me like I was a stranger. I knew what he was thinking. He was thinking about everything we had built, everything I had thrown away for something temporary, something that meant nothing in the grand scheme of things. I don't know if I can do this anymore, Lily, he said quietly, finally breaking the silence. I don't think I can live like this, with you, not after what you did. And in that moment, I felt the ground beneath me crack. I wanted to scream, to tell him how sorry I was, to beg him to stay, but I knew I couldn't. The damage was done. There was no coming back from this. I didn't mean to hurt you, I whispered, but it was too late. I could see it in his eyes. The trust, the love, everything we had shared, was gone. And I had destroyed it all. A few weeks later, Tom told me he wanted a divorce. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. He couldn't forgive me. He couldn't trust me. And, in a way, I couldn't blame him. I had broken us. I had betrayed the only person who had ever truly cared about me. The guilt, the shame, it was all consuming. I fought it at first, tried to convince him that we could fix it, that we could rebuild. But I saw the same look in his eyes that I had seen so many times before. The look of a man who had been worn down by years of disappointment, by a wife who had become someone he didn't recognize. We went through the motions, lawyers, paperwork, dividing up our life into pieces that could never fit back together. I moved out, and just like that, our life together was over. I had lost him. I kept replaying everything in my head, every choice I made that led me to that night, every word I said to myself to justify my actions. But in the end, it didn't matter. The reality was harsh and simple. I had hurt him. I had hurt us. Tom moved on, as he should have. He deserved better than what I had given him. I, on the other hand, was left alone with the aftermath of my actions. I tried to find comfort in the idea that maybe this would make me stronger, that I would learn from my mistakes. But it didn't feel like strength. It felt like regret. And it hurt more than I could have ever imagined. It's been a year now since the divorce was final. I'm still trying to pick up the pieces to rebuild a life that was once whole. But there's a part of me, a small part, that still wonders what might have happened if I had just stopped. If I had never gone out that night, never met those men, never let myself be swept away. But I can't change the past. I can only live with it. And the truth is, I don't know if I'll ever truly forgive myself. I thought I was searching for freedom, for excitement, for a way to feel alive again. But all I found was loss. I had freedom for a night, but it cost me everything I had. And now, I'm left trying to make sense of it all.